Prologue, the Kivowak animals. It wasn't a big bang, it was progress beyond all frontiers. And long before our waking forests, our rolling hills, our starry nights, there was the Kivowak. The Kivowak was not of celestial shape. No galaxies, quasars, stars, or planets, for these were but its children. It rested as a fractal structure upon the surface of space-time, a whirlpool of chemistry, a layered labyrinthian land. This world lived as a maddening canvas, slave unto anarchy and alien arrangements. A Kivowak landscape. A cascade of formations was the parent of the known cosmos, a painting of light, energy, mass, color, cradled in swirling fractals. To visualize, one might look to the Mandelbrot set, a mathematical equation to provide a simple glimpse into the majesty of a Kivowak structure through a dance of complex numbers. But only a glimpse. It would seem plain to the meanest intelligence that in a world such as this, dictated by wild absurdity, life would simply not exist. And yet, the Kivowac was inhabited by one style of fauna. Enter the Kivowakian, or simply Kiva for short. These animals roam their multi-layer realm in symbiotic synchronicity to its madness. As with all life, these creatures are the result of humble beginnings, developing and evolving under the immense natural selection pressure of their home, far beyond that of the nurturing earth, whose realities would be considered forgiving and merciful by contrast. Only through the pressures of a crushing objective world did these animals eventually thrive in their vicious land. In the face of such heartless natural mysteries, Kivowakians were the grandest of answers. Organisms of severe strength, agility, symmetry, color, and beauty. Beyond the tooth and claw, the Kivas summoned blades from bone and daggers from soft flesh and fur, utilities born of majestic bodies in answer to the great challenges placed before them. They moved untouched by time, their ends only prescribed by others of their breed. Immortal, but not invincible. The result of these qualities was a species able to retain its collective knowledge rather than passing it down through generations, where one might witness a loss in potency. Instead, the Kivowakians themselves carried the flame of knowledge ever onward. It takes no effort at all to imagine a far advanced Earth, had its brilliant minds lived consistently through the ages. Alas, and to our doom. They grazed the world like falling stars, glittering, then vanished into the dark, leaving only the ghost of their light. However, this doom did not plague the Kivowak. Insteadly, after the withering of significant time, the animals had developed intellect, markedly more complex than any other. Some might ask, what makes a Kivowakian? A simple question with a rather complex answer, for they lacked consistency and likeness. They could be large and small, lean and dense, winged, clawed, and tentacled. These animals were the result of nature's perfect fire, and so they adhered to the principles of that flame. This meant they could be strong, fast, muscled, slender, light, heavy, and powerful, but always creatures of great quality and blood. A Kivowak animal may be identified by many things, the easiest among them being their shared physical traits. Few though they were, all had pupils crossed like clouds and diamonds upon dilation, and 3 navels marked their bellies. Strange patterns mated their flesh, around the face in particular, like the makeup of a dark carnival. Mammalian, reptilian, amphibian, molluscoid, insectoid, avian, and aquatic formations could all be observed across the breed, but not to any of these categories did they belong, only to the Kivowak. However, despite these brilliances, the animals lived within chaos, caged by instinct, slave to powers physical only. None had yet dreamed of a world beyond the rude beast, which gnawed and howled, naked without language or law or ambition. And then came Locket, the Lady of Black and Rend. The Lady of Black and Rend. Little was ever documented in the dark times before Locket, for it was she who led the charge in cultural progression. From the very beginning, her mind was noteworthy and tuned to the wavelength of order and competence, unlike the monster who bore her, Freda, a creature of chaos and power. Freda was indeed the largest animal recorded at that time. Her description lies in the record of memory, long since transcribed to the pages of Kivik history. Her enormity was greater than anything of earthly mold. A woven titan who dwarfed the mountains of Blackenrend, her furless body was pale, glamorous, and smooth, defined by extraordinary sinew. The head of the beast was crowned in 8 long ears and 46 horns, many of them small and decorative, 10 serving as the merciless impalers, carving around her skull like spears of impervious bone. At the end of her snout was a nose of bluish tint, wet and sensitive to the stench of flesh and fear. Her 8 silvery eyes were tuned to movement, sudden in nature and outstanding colors of an impossible spectrum, shades only available to us in dreams and stolen back by memories upon our return to the waking world to save our minds from madness. From her scalp and down to her back grew a frosty white mane, a flash-frozen waterfall. The stark display ended only at the tip of her tail, so meandering that few ever saw its concluding array of rending spines, and heavy was her chest, lined with dark nipples, a house to protect her hearts, pumping greed, lust, and hatred through physical cataclysm. This was Freda, ascended to Locket, the great terror of Birth Peak, the beast of Blackenrend. Freedom from the dominion of horror would be no easy task, as Freda was empress, queen, and sovereign of that land, though such titles they called her not. Locket knew that order and social contrast would need to be forged in the fires of conflict, and hot was to be her flame. With that reality accepted, she drew up her plans, and for the first time, war came to the Kivowak. A conflict that spread through the rolling hills to the roots of Birth Peak, a battle that stained the lands red. The long struggle was ended with the death of Freda. Splayed headless was the beast, conquered at last, the chest of a mountainous icon of defeat. And so, the War of the Ladies, as it was named, came to a bloody end. But the humiliation of Freda was only the first of Locket's dictations. Soon the great lady turned her horned head away from the lands of Blackenrend and towards dreams of civilization. The Underbirth. After the wounds of conflict were licked, Locket's eyes and ambitions set upon the Glaze, a vast land of white biblical glory and fierce beauty, decorated with shimmering light and startling geography. It was in the Glaze that Locket would build the Underbirth, the most significant of Kivik structures, a great black sphere, held in place by 5 bridges which anchored the city deep. Once rooted, the inner works of the Underbirth were set in motion. The Underbirth was a city of extraordinary vision, comprised of 3 prime districts, the Casino, Hammerlow, and Tombs. First, imagine a black hollow sphere of architecture roughly the size of Saturn, a thick complex of labyrinthian townships, vast lakes, and twisting cobblestone streets. This dense crust of metal, brick, wood, water, and stone was the Casino, the largest city district. From Casino streets one could look to the sky and glimpse the far side of the city, curving overhead. Next, imagine a smaller sphere, about the size of Mars, hanging at the center of the Casino, like the nucleus to an atom. This green orb was the Tombs, home of all things political, historical, and important. It was the host to libraries great and sprawling, mosaic bathhouses of oceanic scale, magnificent courts and lecture halls, and quiet reading rooms, home to the proudest thinkers, writers, fighters, and legislators, the thinking mind of the city. Finally, imagine 5 blue rings, textured by streets, rivers, and towns, orbiting the Tombs, each tailored to specific pillars of civic quality. This was the Hammerlow. Built upon these proud halos were the finest of markets, gardens, institutions, and cityscapes, accompanied by the symphony of life, the bustle of free economy, and the joyful entertainers about their rounds. Unlike the Kivowak itself, the Underbirth was a place ruled by order, thinking, politics, poetry, art, and above all, competence. Constructed by the fields of Kivik mechanics and sciences, the Underbirth bore the mark of animal genius, thinkers at last. And thus, the border of their lands they named the Madness Frontier. The streets coiled and twisted, creating the veins of prestigious towns and wards, like splashings of otherworldly art. Water flowed upward and downward through coiling canals, and light was not held in a flame or a bulb, but instead grew through the streets in photons of phosphorescence and color. In fire, metal, blood, and ink, Locket's home was forged. There came the Long Watch, the Frayed and Loyalists, the Howler War, and the Trade Revolution. This birthed the golden epic of Locket's law, and the Kivowakians who had followed her splendid ambitions lived lives beyond the previous frontiers of imagination. Dressed in chain, silk, and fabric, bespeckled and hatted they were, the writers and speakers of an expanding language, the authors and citizens of law. The animals had become civilized.